The gunshot echoed through the underground server room before Nathan Cole could finish his sentence. Blood spread across the concrete floor as the bodyguard's weapon swung toward Emily Carter, the shy waitress who'd risked everything to save a man she barely knew. Nathan had exactly 3 seconds to make an impossible choice: protect the hard drive containing proof of his innocence and reclaim his billion-dollar empire, or destroy it to save the woman who believed him when the entire world called him a thief. This is the story of how losing everything taught one man what actually mattered. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. And stick around until the end, because what happens next will change everything you thought you knew about second chances. The February wind cut through Chicago's financial district like a blade, rattling the floor-to-ceiling windows of Sterling Tower's 47th floor conference room. Nathan Cole stood at the head of the obsidian table, his charcoal Tom Ford suit perfectly tailored, his jaw tight as he reviewed the final merger documents that would expand his logistics empire into 6 new states. He should have felt triumphant. This deal represented 4 years of brutal negotiation, countless sleepless nights, and the kind of calculated risks that separated billionaires from everyone else grinding away in cubicles below. But something felt wrong. Nathan had built his fortune on instinct, on reading rooms and people with the precision of a surgeon, and right now every nerve in his body screamed that something was off. "Nathan, you good?" Damian Cross leaned back in his leather chair, his Rolex catching the afternoon light. Damian had been Nathan's business partner for 12 years, his best friend since college, the godfather to Nathan's 8-year-old daughter, Sophie. If there was anyone in this world Nathan trusted completely, it was Damian. "Yeah, just want to make sure we didn't miss anything." Nathan's voice carried the flat, controlled tone that made junior executives nervous. He'd learned early that showing emotion in business was like bleeding in shark-infested water. "We've triple-checked everything," Damian said, flashing that easy smile that had charmed investors out of millions. Legal team signed off. Accounting verified the numbers. "This is it, brother. We're about to become the biggest logistics operation in the Midwest." The other executives around the table nodded, their faces reflecting the kind of carefully managed ambition that Nathan recognized because he'd worn the same expression for years. These weren't people. They were chess pieces, assets, variables in an equation that either produced profit or got eliminated. Nathan picked up his Mont Blanc pen, the same pen he'd used to sign his first $1 million contract, the same pen his late wife Rachel had given him on their 5th anniversary, 3 months before the car accident that left him a widowed single father with a 4-year-old daughter and a hole in his chest that never quite healed. He clicked the pen once, twice. "Let's do this," he said. The door exploded inward before the pen touched paper. Federal agents in tactical gear flooded the conference room like a SWAT team hitting a drug den. Nathan's brain stuttered, trying to process the impossible scene unfolding in front of him. This had to be a mistake, some kind of training exercise in the wrong building. Anything except what it looked like. "Nathan Cole, you're under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, and theft of pension fund assets totaling $3.2 billion. The lead agent, a woman with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen too many white-collar criminals, stepped forward with handcuffs ready. "You have the right to remain silent." The words became static. Nathan's vision tunneled. $3.2 billion. Pension funds. The accusations hit like physical blows, each one more insane than the last. "There's been a mistake." Nathan's voice came out steadier than he felt. "I haven't stolen anything. I run a legitimate logistics company. This is—" "Save it for your lawyer." The agent grabbed his wrist. Nathan looked at Damian, expecting his partner to jump in, to call their legal team, to do something. But Damian wasn't moving. He sat perfectly still in his chair, and the expression on his face wasn't shock or confusion. It was relief. Something cold and terrible crystallized in Nathan's gut. "Damian?" The word came out like a question, but Nathan already knew the answer. He'd known the second he saw that look. The same look Damian got when he closed a deal that had been almost impossible to pull off. "I'm sorry, Nathan." Damian stood up slowly, adjusting his cufflinks. "I really am. But you built this empire on my ideas, my connections, my work. You just had the name and the charisma. I got tired of being the supporting actor in my own story." The betrayal hit harder than the handcuffs snapping around Nathan's wrists. 12 years. 12 years of friendship, partnership, trust. Damien had been at Rachel's funeral. He'd helped Nathan learn how to braid Sophie's hair after the nanny quit. He'd been family. The accounts. Nathan's mind raced through the implications. You had access to everything. Every signature, every transfer, every financial decision for the past 4 years leads back to you. Damien's smile didn't reach his eyes. I made sure of it. By tomorrow morning, you'll be the most hated man in America. The billionaire who stole retirement money from teachers and firefighters and nurses. Good luck explaining that you were too busy playing dad to notice your own partner draining the accounts. The agents hauled Nathan toward the door. He didn't struggle. What was the point? His mind was already 10 steps ahead, calculating, planning, trying to find the angle that would fix this. There had to be evidence. Digital trails, something that would prove he hadn't touched those pension funds. Sophie, Nathan said, his voice cracking for the first time. What about my daughter? Don't worry. Damien's voice followed him into the hallway. I'll make sure she's taken care of. I am her godfather, after all. The thread underneath those words was crystal clear. The next 72 hours dissolved into a nightmare that felt like drowning in slow motion. Nathan's bail hearing turned into a media circus. The judge, responding to public pressure from victims who'd lost their retirement savings, set bail at $50 million. Nathan's accounts were frozen, his assets seized, his penthouse locked down by federal marshals who treated him like he'd personally murdered their families. The news cameras caught him leaving the courthouse in an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed, his face blank. By the time he made it back to his cell, the footage had been edited into 1,000 memes. Billionaire trash. Lock him up. He stole my mom's pension. His lawyers quit. Every single one. Too much public backlash, they said. Bad for business. Nathan understood. He'd have made the same calculation 6 months ago. His phone, when he finally got it back, was useless. 300 messages, but none from anyone offering help. Just people he'd considered friends explaining why they couldn't be associated with him anymore. Business contacts deleting his number, investors demanding their money back from deals that no longer existed. On the 4th day, Nathan's sister Julia came to see him in jail. She looked older than he remembered, tired in a way that had nothing to do with lack of sleep. Sophie's asking for you, Julia said through the scratched plexiglass divider. I didn't know what to tell her. Tell her I love her. Nathan's throat felt like sandpaper. Tell her Daddy made some mistakes, but he's going to fix them. Are you? Julia's eyes were red. Because the news says you stole billions of dollars from people who can't afford to lose anything. Did you do it, Nathan? The question hurt worse than the handcuffs or the jail cell or Damien's betrayal. His own sister wasn't sure. No, he said. Damien set me up. He's been planning this for years, Julia. You have to believe me. I want to. Her voice broke. But I can't help you. David's company is already getting pressure from their clients because I'm your sister. If I support you publicly, we'll lose everything. The house, the kids' college fund, everything. Nathan understood. He'd built a career on understanding leverage and risk. Julia had 3 kids and a mortgage. She couldn't afford to go down with him. It's okay, he lied. Keep Sophie safe. That's all that matters. After Julia left, Nathan sat in his cell and did the math. His trial was set for 6 months away. His lawyers had abandoned him. His accounts were frozen. And somewhere in Chicago, Damien was probably celebrating his victory with champagne that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Nathan had exactly $2,000 in an old checking account that the feds hadn't found yet. His emergency fund from before he became a billionaire, back when $2,000 actually meant something. And he had one play left. He called in a favor from a bail bondsman who owed him from years ago before Sterling Tower, before the Empire. The guy's voice was cold over the phone, but he agreed. 10% down on a $50 million bail. Nathan wiped out his last $2,000 and signed his life away to a company that broke kneecaps when people didn't pay up. The bondsman's final words stayed with Nathan. You run, we find you. You don't pay, we collect. One way or another. Nathan walked out of Cook County Jail at 2 a.m. with nothing but the clothes on his back and a phone that would die in 3 hours. The February cold hit him like a punishment. He'd left his coat in the penthouse, along with everything else he'd ever owned. The media was waiting. Of course they were. Someone had tipped them off. Camera lights blinded him. Questions came like bullets. Did you steal the money? How do you sleep at night? What about the single mom who lost her entire retirement? Nathan pushed through the crowd, head down, walking fast. He'd learned in business that sometimes the only way to win was to refuse to engage. Don't explain, don't justify, just move forward. But the crowd followed him for 3 blocks before he finally lost them in an alley behind a Chinese restaurant. He crouched next to a dumpster, breathing hard, his heart hammering against his ribs. His phone buzzed. One new message. The number was blocked, but Nathan knew exactly who it was before he opened it. Damien, you should have stayed in jail, Nathan. What happens next is on you. Nathan stared at the message until his phone screen went dark. Then he stood up, straightened his shoulders, and started walking. He didn't have a plan, didn't have money or friends or hope. But he had one thing Damien hadn't counted on. He had absolutely nothing left to lose. The next 5 days were a masterclass in how fast a life could unravel. Nathan burned through his connections like firewood, calling in every favor, every old partnership, every handshake deal from his rise to the top. But Damien had been thorough. Every person Nathan had ever helped was either too scared to be associated with him or had already been bought off. He tried to contact his old mentor, Marcus Webb, the man who'd taught him everything about logistics and business strategy. Marcus's assistant said he was traveling abroad. Indefinitely. He called his college roommate, the guy who'd crashed on Nathan's couch for 2 years while getting his MBA. The number was disconnected. He even tried reaching out to business rivals, thinking maybe someone would want to help him just to stick it to Damien, but they'd all already made their deals. Damien was the new king of Chicago's logistics world, and nobody wanted to back the losing horse. Nathan's last real asset, a vintage Rolex his father had given him, sold at a pawn shop for $800. The guy behind the counter smirked when Nathan handed it over, and Nathan knew the watch was worth at least $15,000. But what was he going to do? Negotiate? He needed food more than he needed dignity. The money lasted 2 days. Cheap motels that rented by the hour and didn't ask questions. Gas station sandwiches that tasted like cardboard and regret. Black coffee that was more temperature than flavor. On the 6th day, Nathan's phone finally died. No charger. No way to get one. The device became a useless brick of glass and circuits, cutting him off from the last thread connecting him to his old life. That night, he walked through downtown Chicago in shoes that were falling apart, a designer suit that was torn and stained, and a desperation that felt like weights tied around his ankles. The buildings that used to represent his kingdom now looked like monuments to everything he'd lost. He should have been in his penthouse right now, helping Sophie with her homework, reading her a bedtime story, being a father instead of a cautionary tale. The temperature dropped to 15 degrees. Nathan's breath came out in frozen clouds. He'd thought Chicago winters were brutal when he was watching them from behind triple-paned windows in climate-controlled offices. Turned out they were 1,000 times worse when you were actually in them. He found himself in a neighborhood he'd never visited despite living in Chicago for 15 years. The kind of place where streetlights stayed broken for months and graffiti covered every surface like urban camouflage. Not dangerous, exactly, just forgotten. The parts of the city that people like Nathan Cole pretended didn't exist. His stomach cramped with hunger. When was the last time he'd eaten? Yesterday morning? The day before? Time had stopped meaning anything beyond the immediate need to survive the next hour. That's when he saw it. A diner squatted on the corner like it had been there since the city was built. The neon sign, Rosie's 24-hour diner, flickered in a pattern that suggested it was held together by hope and electrical tape. Through the fogged windows, Nathan could see maybe 3 customers inside. The place looked like it served food poisoning with a side of regret. But it was warm, and Nathan was so cold he couldn't feel his fingers anymore. He pushed through the door, and a bell chimed above his head. The warmth hit him like a physical force, making his skin prickle, a sensation returned to places that had gone numb. The diner smelled like coffee and grease and something baking that made Nathan's stomach twist with need. Vinyl booths lined the walls, their red upholstery cracked and patched with duct tape. The floor was ancient linoleum, worn thin in paths that showed where decades of customers had walked. Behind the counter, a woman looked up from refilling a coffee pot. Nathan's first thought was that she looked tired. Not just end-of-shift tired, but bone-deep exhausted in a way he recognized because he'd seen it in mirrors after Rachel died. She had dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, minimal makeup, and the kind of face that was pretty in an understated way that people probably overlooked. Her name tag said Emily in faded letters. "Sit anywhere," she said, her voice quiet enough that Nathan had to step closer to hear it. "I'll be right with you." Nathan slid into a booth near the back, as far from the windows as possible. Old habits from business negotiations. Always keep your back to the wall, always have an exit strategy, never let anyone see you when you're vulnerable. He didn't have a menu. Didn't matter. He had exactly $12.37 in his pocket, and he was going to make it last as long as possible. Emily approached with a coffee pot and a mug that had a chip in the rim. She set the mug down carefully, like she was handling something valuable instead of cheap diner dishware. "Coffee?" she asked. "Please." Nathan's voice came out rougher than he intended. "How much?" $2. Free refills." She poured the coffee without looking at him directly, her eyes staying focused on the mug like the task required absolute concentration. Nathan wrapped both hands around the cup, letting the heat seep into his frozen fingers. The coffee tasted like burnt dirt and miracles. He'd drunk $1,000 bottles of wine that didn't feel half as good as this $2 diner coffee, warming him from the inside out. "You hungry?" Emily asked. She still wasn't looking at him. Nathan got the impression she didn't look at customers much, just kept her head down and did her job and tried not to be noticed. He wanted to say yes, wanted to order everything on the menu, but he had to make his money last. "Just the coffee," he said. "Thanks." Emily nodded and turned away, but she hesitated, just for a second, her eyes finally flicking up to his face. Something changed in her expression. Not recognition, she clearly didn't know who he was, but something else. Concern, maybe, or understanding. She walked back to the counter, and Nathan let himself relax into the booth. Just for a minute. Just long enough to get warm and figure out his next move. He must have dozed off, because the next thing he knew, Emily was sliding a plate onto his table. A slice of cherry pie, the crust golden brown, steam rising from where she'd just heated it, a scoop of vanilla ice cream melting into ruby red filling. "I didn't order this," Nathan said. "I know." Emily's voice was barely above a whisper. "But you look like you need it more than the register needs $6. Nathan stared at the pie, his vision blurred, and he realized with horror that he was about to cry. When was the last time someone had just given him something, without wanting anything in return? Without an angle or a deal or an expectation? "I can't pay you," he said, the words sticking in his throat. "Didn't ask you to." Emily refilled his coffee. "Eat before it gets cold." She walked away before Nathan could figure out what to say. The pie tasted like childhood and safety, and every good thing he'd forgotten existed. He ate slowly, making it last, and felt something crack open in his chest that had been frozen solid for days. He was halfway through when the diner door opened and two men walked in. Nathan's survival instincts kicked in immediately. These weren't customers. The way they moved was wrong, too purposeful, too focused. They scanned the diner like predators searching for prey, and then their eyes landed on Nathan. "Nathan Cole." The taller one spoke with a Brooklyn accent that didn't match his Chicago location. "You're a hard man to find." Nathan's hand tightened on his fork. "I think you've got the wrong person." "Nah." The shorter one, built like a fire hydrant with anger issues, cracked his knuckles. "We got the right guy. Mr. Cross wants to have a conversation with you. Real civilized-like. Damien." Of course. Nathan should have known his former partner wouldn't just let him walk around free, even if he was broken. "Tell Damien I'm not interested in conversation," Nathan said, keeping his voice level. "That wasn't a request." Brooklyn pulled back his jacket just enough to show a shoulder holster. "We can do this easy, or we can do this complicated. But either way, you're coming with us." Nathan's mind raced through options. He could run, but he wouldn't make it 3 steps before they caught him. He could fight, but he'd lost at least 15 pounds in the past week and couldn't remember the last time he'd had a full meal before the pie. These guys were professionals. He was out of moves. "Okay," Nathan said quietly. "Let me finish my coffee first." Brooklyn laughed. "Sure, man. Last meal and all that." Nathan took a slow sip, his brain screaming at him to think, to find the angle, to do something. But there was nothing. He'd finally hit the wall where money and connections and intelligence didn't matter anymore. Actually, a quiet voice said behind the thugs, he's not going anywhere. Emily stood there holding a coffee pot in one hand and her phone in the other. Her hands were shaking, but her voice stayed steady. The police are already on their way, she continued. I called them when you two walked in because you set off every red flag I've got. So unless you want to explain to Chicago PD why you're threatening customers in my diner, I suggest you leave. Fire Hydrant turned toward her with a sneer. Little girl, you really don't want to... Emily threw the coffee pot. It wasn't a good throw. The pot sailed past Fire Hydrant's head and smashed against the wall behind him, spraying hot coffee and glass everywhere. But it created exactly the distraction Nathan needed. He lunged from the booth, grabbed the ketchup bottle from the table, and smashed it across Brooklyn's face. The man went down hard, blood mixing with ketchup in a combination that looked worse than it probably was. Fire Hydrant grabbed for his gun, but Emily was faster. She snatched a heavy ceramic plate from the counter and brought it down on his wrist with a crack that made Nathan wince. The gun clattered to the floor. Go! Emily screamed at Nathan. Back door! Nathan ran. Not because he was brave, but because he'd learned that when someone gave you a chance to survive, you took it. He burst through the kitchen, past a startled cook, who was definitely high and didn't care about the chaos, and slammed through the back exit into an alley that smelled like garbage and rain. Behind him, he heard Emily's footsteps. She'd followed him. This stranger, this waitress who'd given him pie and saved his life, had abandoned her job and run into danger for a man she'd met 20 minutes ago. Why did you do that? Nathan gasped as they ran through the alley. Because nobody deserves to be dragged away by thugs, Emily panted. And because I believe you. You don't even know me. I know enough. She grabbed his hand. Her fingers were small and cold, but surprisingly strong. Turn left here. They ran through Chicago's dark streets, two people who shouldn't have fit together, who came from completely different worlds, running from men with guns and a betrayal that was bigger than both of them. And for the first time in days, Nathan Cole felt something other than despair. He felt hope. They stopped running 4 blocks away, ducking into a narrow alcove between a closed laundromat and a bodega with bars on the windows. Nathan's lungs burned. His dress shoes, what was left of them, had rubbed his heels raw, and his heart was hammering so hard he thought it might crack a rib. Emily leaned against the brick wall, her chest heaving, her ponytail half undone and hanging lopsided. In the dim streetlight, Nathan could see her hand shaking as she pulled out her phone. Were you serious? Nathan asked between gasps. About calling the police? Emily looked at him like he'd just asked if water was wet. Of course not. You really think cops would show up to Rosie's in under 30 minutes? That neighborhood's lucky if they come at all. Despite everything, Nathan almost laughed. So you just, what, bluffed? I work double shifts at a 24-hour diner in one of the worst parts of Chicago, Emily said, still trying to catch her breath. You learned to bluff, or you learned to get walked over. I got tired of the second option a long time ago. Nathan studied her in the flickering light. Her uniform, a pink dress that had probably been cheerful once but was now faded to the color of old gum, was stained with coffee from the thrown pot. She had a cut on her cheek from the shattered glass, a thin line of blood trailing down toward her jaw. You're bleeding, he said. Emily touched her face, looked at the blood on her fingers and shrugged. Yeah, well, you're wanted by the FBI and being hunted by armed thugs, so I think we're both having a rough night. You knew who I was. It wasn't a question. Saw your face on the news 3 days ago, Emily admitted. They were playing it on loop at the diner. Billionaire thief, pension fund fraud, all that. But when you walked in tonight, she trailed off, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. You didn't look like a criminal. You looked like someone who'd lost everything and didn't know how to find his way back. That's because I have lost everything. Nathan slid down the wall until he was sitting on the cold pavement. His legs had stopped working properly. And those men back there? They work for my ex-partner, the one who framed me. He sent them to... Nathan's throat closed up. He didn't actually know what Damien's endgame was, and he wasn't sure he wanted to. Emily sat down next to him, leaving a careful gap between them. Professional distance, or maybe just common sense? The news said you stole billions from retirement funds. I didn't. I know. Nathan turned to look at her. How could you possibly know that? Emily pulled her knees up to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. She looked younger like that, vulnerable in a way that made Nathan realize she was probably close to his age, but life had worn her down differently. Where his stress came from board meetings and hostile takeovers, hers came from making rent and surviving shifts that never ended. "I worked at Rosie's for 6 years," she said quietly. "In that time, I've served maybe 300 people who were running from something. Cops, loan sharks, abusive exes, their own mistakes. You get good at reading people when your tips depend on knowing who's going to stuff you and who's actually going to pay. And what did you read from me? Fear. Real bone-deep terror. Not the kind you get from being caught, the kind you get from being hunted." Emily looked at him directly for the first time, and Nathan was struck by her eyes. Brown, tired, but sharp in a way that suggested she missed very little. Criminals who get caught, they're angry, defensive, they've got lawyers and strategies and backup plans. You walked into that diner like a ghost, like you'd already given up on everything except maybe getting warm for 5 minutes. Nathan didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. "Plus," Emily continued, a small smile tugging at her mouth, "I minored in forensic accounting before I dropped out of college. The numbers they're claiming you stole? The timeline doesn't match up with the business model I read about in your company profile. Someone would have needed constant access to multiple accounts over at least 3 years. That's not a CEO doing shady deals. That's someone embedded in the system with time and patience." Nathan stared at her. "You studied forensic accounting? 2 years at Northwestern, before my mom got sick." Emily's voice flattened out, the way people's voices do when they're talking about pain they've learned to live with. "Stage 4 ovarian cancer. I dropped out to take care of her, burned through my college fund paying for treatments insurance wouldn't cover, and then she died anyway. By the time it was over, I had $73,000 in medical debt and an incomplete degree that qualified me for exactly nothing. I'm sorry." The words felt inadequate, but Nathan meant them. "Yeah, well," Emily stood up, brushing off her uniform. "We all got our damage. Question is, what are you going to do about yours?" "I don't know." Nathan's voice cracked. "I don't have money, I don't have lawyers, I don't have evidence." Damien made sure of that. Every financial record, every document, everything points to me. He spent years setting this up. So find something he didn't think of. Emily held out her hand to help him up. Guys like that, guys who think they're the smartest person in the room, they always miss something. They're so busy being clever they forget to be careful. Nathan took her hand and let her pull him to his feet. Her grip was stronger than he expected, calloused from years of carrying heavy plates and scrubbing tables. "Why are you helping me?" he asked. "You could have just served the coffee and minded your business." Emily was quiet for a long moment, her eyes distant. 3 years ago, my mom was dying in a hospital bed, and I was trying to figure out how to pay for one more round of chemo that probably wouldn't work anyway. I went to 7 different banks asking for a loan. Every single one turned me down because I was a college dropout waitress with no collateral and no cosigner. She looked at Nathan, and there was something fierce in her expression now, something that suggested the quiet waitress was only one version of who she was. "The 8th bank was different," she continued. "The loan officer looked at my application for maybe 2 minutes, then called someone. Turned out his wife had died of cancer the year before. He knew what it was like. He approved a personal loan that probably violated 6 different regulations. And when my mom died and I couldn't make payments, he restructured the debt so I wouldn't lose everything." Emily pulled something from her pocket, a silver coin, worn smooth from handling. "He gave me this, said it was his lucky piece, and that I should keep it until I was back on my feet. Then I should pass the luck on to someone else who needed it." She pressed the coin into Nathan's palm. It was warm from being in her pocket, surprisingly heavy for something so small. "I don't need luck," Nathan said, trying to hand it back. "I need a miracle." "Then consider this a down payment." Emily closed his fingers around the coin. "You can return it when you rebuild your life, however long that takes." Nathan looked at the coin, then at Emily, and felt something shift in his chest. For the first time since Damien's betrayal, he didn't feel completely alone. "Okay," he said. "But first we need to get off the street. Those guys are going to come looking for us, and I don't want you getting hurt because of me." "Too late for that." Emily touched the cut on her cheek. "But I know a place we can go. It's not fancy, but it's warm and nobody's going to find us there. They walked through Chicago's pre-dawn streets like refugees from a war nobody else could see. The city was just starting to wake up. Delivery trucks rumbling past, early shift workers trudging to the train, a homeless man arranging cardboard boxes into something resembling shelter. Nathan had walked these streets 1,000 times in his old life, usually in the back of a town car with tinted windows, checking his phone and not seeing anything except the obstacles between him and his next meeting. Now he saw everything. The broken streetlights that made whole blocks dangerous, the liquor stores with bulletproof glass. The people who'd given up on everything except surviving one more day. "This is my world," Emily said quietly, like she could read his thoughts. "Not pretty, is it?" "I never knew," Nathan admitted. "I mean, I knew poverty existed. I donated to charities, wrote checks, but I never actually—" He stopped, because there wasn't a good way to finish that sentence without sounding like exactly the kind of privileged asshole he was realizing he'd been. "Nobody sees it unless they're living it," Emily said without judgment. "That's kind of the point. People like you write checks because it makes you feel better. People like me cash those checks because we don't have a choice." They turned down a street that made the area around Rosie's Diner look upscale. Graffiti covered every surface. Half the buildings had broken windows. A group of teenagers on the corner went silent as Nathan and Emily passed, their eyes tracking the movement with the kind of predatory awareness that came from growing up in places where weakness got exploited. Emily led him to a building that looked like it should have been condemned 30 years ago. The front door hung crooked on its hinges. The lobby smelled like mildew and something else Nathan didn't want to identify. "Home sweet home," Emily said with zero enthusiasm. She started climbing stairs that creaked ominously under their weight. They climbed 4 floors before Emily stopped at a door marked 4C. 3 locks, a deadbolt, a chain, and something that looked homemade. She unlocked them one by one, her fingers moving through the sequence like muscle memory. The apartment was smaller than Nathan's walk-in closet had been. One room serving as kitchen, living room, and bedroom all at once. A Murphy bed pulled down from the wall. A kitchenette that was basically a hot plate and a mini fridge. A bathroom that Nathan could see through the half-open door, barely big enough to turn around in. But it was clean. Obsessively so. The windows might have been old and single pane, but they were spotless. The floor was swept. Books lined one wall in neat stacks, mostly textbooks, Nathan noticed. Accounting, finance, forensic analysis. "Sorry about the mess," Emily said, which was clearly automatic because there was no mess. "It's fine." Nathan stood awkwardly in the middle of the room, suddenly aware that he was a strange man in a woman's apartment, and she had absolutely no reason to trust him beyond a gut feeling and some financial analysis. Emily seemed to realize the same thing at the same moment. She grabbed a kitchen knife from the drawer and set it on the counter between them. Not threatening, just practical. "So here's the deal," she said. "You can crash on the floor tonight because you look like you're about to fall over. But tomorrow, we figure out how to prove you're innocent. And if at any point I think you're lying to me, or you're actually guilty, or you do anything that makes me uncomfortable, I will put this knife through your leg and call the cops myself. We clear?" "Crystal." Nathan almost smiled. "You know, for a shy waitress, you're kind of terrifying." "I'm only shy at work because tips are better when men think you're sweet and helpless," Emily said flatly. "At home, I'm the girl who survived Northwestern's cutthroat business program for 2 years and then watched her mother die slowly while fighting insurance companies that would rather let people suffer than pay out claims. Sweet and helpless got beat out of me a long time ago." She tossed him a blanket that had definitely seen better days. "You can use the bathroom first. There's a shower if you want it. But the hot water only lasts about 5 minutes and the pressure's terrible." Nathan took the blanket, his throat tight. "Thank you for all of this. I don't know how to repay you. Start by proving I didn't make a massive mistake bringing you here." Emily pulled her hair out of its destroyed ponytail, and Nathan realized her hands were still shaking. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind the reality of what she'd just done. Assaulted 2 armed men, fled her job, brought a fugitive to her home. "Are you okay?" Nathan asked. Emily laughed, but it came out wrong, too high and tight. "No, I'm absolutely not okay. I just threw away a job I've had for 6 years, probably got myself on some kind of criminal radar, and invited a man accused of stealing billions of dollars into my apartment because I have a feeling he's innocent. This is officially the stupidest thing I've ever done, and I once tried to make rent by playing poker with money I didn't have. How'd that work out? I won $800 and learned I'm actually pretty good at reading people when money's on the line. Emily sank onto the Murphy bed. But this isn't poker. This is real life, and real life doesn't care about feelings or hunches. Nathan sat down on the floor across from her, the blanket pooled in his lap. For what it's worth, I think you're right. About me being innocent, and about someone being embedded in the system. Tell me about your partner, Emily said, the one you think set you up. So Nathan told her. About Damien Cross, the friend who'd been there since college. About building Sterling Logistics from the ground up together. About late nights and impossible deadlines and victories that felt like they'd earned them. About how Damien had been the godfather at Sophie's christening. How he'd helped Nathan survive the first terrible year after Rachel's death. He had access to everything, Nathan said, the pieces clicking together as he spoke them out loud. Every account, every contract, every transaction. I trusted him completely. He could have been moving money for years and I wouldn't have noticed because I was too busy running the actual company while he handled the finances. So where's the proof? Emily asked. There has to be a paper trail somewhere. Digital records, something. That's the thing. Nathan rubbed his face, exhaustion making his thoughts slow. Damien's smart. Whatever trail exists, it's probably buried so deep that even forensic accountants would have trouble finding it. And anything obvious would point straight back to me because my name's on everything. Emily was quiet for a long moment, chewing her bottom lip in concentration. Nathan recognized the look. It was the same expression he wore when solving complex logistics problems. The gears turning, connections forming. What about your company's servers? She asked suddenly. Physical servers, I mean. Not cloud storage. Nathan frowned. We have a server room in Sterling Tower's basement. Old school setup because some of our clients are paranoid about cloud security. Why? Because cloud storage can be manipulated remotely from anywhere in the world, Emily said, her eyes brightening with the kind of intensity that probably made her a terror in college classrooms. But physical servers? Those require physical access. If Damien was moving money around, he'd need to cover his tracks locally too. And if he was as thorough as you say, he probably has backup records of everything, including the real transactions that prove he was the one stealing. You think he'd keep evidence of his own crime? Guys like that always do. Emily stood up, started pacing in the small space between the bed and the kitchenette. It's insurance. If things go sideways, if someone starts asking questions, he can prove it wasn't him by showing exactly how the money moved. He just never expected to need it because he was so sure his frame job would stick. Nathan felt something he hadn't felt in weeks, hope, actual genuine possibility that this nightmare might have an exit. But there's a problem, he said slowly. Sterling Tower is probably crawling with federal agents right now. And even if it's not, Damien definitely has security on those servers. I can't just walk in there. No, Emily agreed. But you used to own the building. You know the layout, the security systems, the blind spots. She stopped pacing and looked at him. We can get in. Not through the front door, obviously, but there's always a way in if you know where to look. We? Nathan shook his head. No, absolutely not. You've already done too much. I'm not dragging you into a break-in at a federal crime scene. You're not dragging me anywhere. I'm volunteering. Emily crossed her arms. Look, you need someone who understands forensic accounting to know what to look for on those servers. And you need someone who hasn't been plastered all over the news, because the second you show your face in that building, you're done. Emily. Plus, she continued, talking over him, I've got nothing to lose. My job's already gone. I've got no family left, no college degree, and $73,000 in debt that's going to follow me until I die or declare bankruptcy. This is literally the most interesting thing that's happened to me in 3 years, and I'll be damned if I'm sitting on the sidelines while you try to break into a skyscraper by yourself. Nathan wanted to argue, wanted to protect her from the consequences of getting involved with him. But the truth was, he needed help. And Emily was offering it freely, with full knowledge of the risks. Okay, he said finally, but we do this smart, no unnecessary chances, and if anything goes wrong, you run. You don't try to save me, you don't stick around to see what happens. You just run and don't look back. Deal. Emily held out her hand for a shake. Nathan took it, and her grip was firm and sure. The grip of someone who'd made a decision and wasn't going to second-guess it. "So," Emily said, pulling her hand back, "Sterling Tower. Tell me everything about the security, the layout, and how we're going to get into that server room without ending up in jail or dead." They spent the next 3 hours planning. Emily made terrible instant coffee on her hot plate, and they spread out on the floor with a notebook and pen because Nathan's phone was dead and Emily's had barely any battery left. Nathan sketched the building from memory. 47 floors, 3 basement levels, security checkpoints at every major entrance. He detailed the guard rotations, the camera placements, the elevator access codes, information he'd barely paid attention to when he owned the place, but that had been absorbed anyway through years of walking those halls. "Here," he said, tapping a spot on his crude drawing. "The service entrance on the east side. It's for deliveries and maintenance. Security's lighter there because they figure nobody's going to rob a logistics company by stealing office supplies." "What about cameras?" "2. One covering the entrance, one in the hallway leading to the freight elevator. But they're on a loop system, 15-second delay before the feed goes live to the security office. If we time it right, we can slip through during the delay." Emily made notes in handwriting so small and precise it looked like computer font. "And the server room? Basement level 3? No windows, reinforced door, biometric lock that requires both a fingerprint and a 6-digit code." Nathan hesitated. "My fingerprints were scrubbed from the system when I was arrested. I can't get us through that door." "But Damien can." Emily looked up from her notes. "He's probably the only person with active access now, right? Since he took over the company?" "Yeah, but we don't exactly have his fingerprint or his access code." "No," Emily said slowly. "But if we can get into the building, we can bypass the biometric lock. Every system has a back door, usually for emergencies when the main system fails. Where would the backup access be?" Nathan thought back to the installation, years ago, the security consultant explaining redundancies and fail-safes. "There's a manual override in the main security office on the first floor, but that's staffed 24/7. "What about the basement security station, the one that monitors the server room?" Nathan's mind raced. "There is one. Small office, usually just one guard during off hours, but I don't know if it has override access." "Worth finding out," Emily added it to her notes. "What else?" They planned until the sky outside started turning gray with approaching dawn. Emily's eyes kept drooping, and Nathan wasn't much better. His body had been running on adrenaline and fear for so long that actual exhaustion felt like being hit by a truck. "We should sleep," Emily finally said, her words slightly slurred. "Can't break into a building if we're too tired to think straight." "Yeah." Nathan didn't move from his spot on the floor. Emily crawled onto the Murphy bed fully clothed, not even bothering to get under the covers. Within seconds, her breathing evened out into the rhythm of sleep. Nathan lay down on the hard floor with the threadbare blanket, and despite everything, the fear, the uncertainty, the knowledge that tomorrow they were going to attempt something incredibly stupid, he felt safer than he had in weeks, because for the first time since Damien's betrayal, he wasn't alone. He woke up to weak sunlight filtering through the dirty windows and the smell of something burning. Nathan sat up fast, his back screaming in protest from sleeping on the floor, and found Emily in the kitchenette attempting to make eggs on her hot plate. "I'm not good at cooking," she said without turning around. Fair warning, the eggs were definitely burned. Nathan ate them anyway because they were food, and he couldn't remember the last time someone had cooked for him. Even bad cooking felt like a luxury. "What time is it?" he asked. "Almost noon. Figured we should sleep as long as possible before doing something incredibly illegal tonight." Nathan's stomach dropped. Tonight. They were really doing this. "Having second thoughts?" Emily asked, reading his expression. "About a dozen." Nathan pushed the eggs around his plate. "But I don't see another option. If we don't get that evidence, I'm going to spend the rest of my life in prison for something I didn't do. And Damien gets to walk away with billions of dollars and my company." "And your daughter," Emily added quietly. Nathan's head snapped up. "What? You mentioned her yesterday." "Sophie? When those thugs came into the diner, you asked about your daughter." Emily sat down across from him with her own plate of burned eggs. "How old is she?" 8. Nathan's voice cracked. "She's with my sister right now. Probably doesn't understand why her dad isn't coming home, why everyone's calling him a criminal. Then we make sure she doesn't grow up believing that." Emily took a bite of eggs, made a face, and kept eating anyway. We get the evidence, we clear your name, and you get your life back. Simple. Nothing about this is simple. No, Emily agreed, but it's what we've got. They spent the afternoon preparing. Emily went out and bought cheap prepaid phones with the last of her tip money. Nathan used one to call his sister from a number Julia wouldn't recognize. She answered on the fourth ring, her voice wary. Hello? Jules, it's me. Silence. Then, Nathan, where are you? The bail bondsman is looking for you. They came to the house. I know. Listen, I don't have much time. How's Sophie? Julia's voice broke. She asks about you every day, wants to know when you're coming home. I don't know what to tell her anymore. Nathan closed his eyes against the pain. Tell her I love her. Tell her Daddy's working on fixing things, and it's going to be okay. Is it? Julia asked. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're running, and that makes you look guilty. I'm not running. I'm fighting back. Nathan gripped the cheap phone so hard the plastic creaked. Damien set me up, Jules. I'm going to prove it. How? You don't have money? You don't have lawyers? I have help. Nathan glanced at Emily, who was carefully not listening from across the room. And I have a plan. Just keep Sophie safe. Don't let Damien near her. He came by yesterday, Julia said quietly. Said he wanted to check on her, make sure she was okay. David sent him away, but Nathan, he's her godfather. If you don't come back, if something happens to you, he could petition for custody. The thought made Nathan's blood run cold. That's not going to happen. I'm coming back, Jules. I promise. He hung up before she could argue, before the fear in her voice could paralyze him. She okay? Emily asked. Scared, confused, angry at me for putting her in this position. Nathan set the phone down. My daughter thinks her dad abandoned her. My sister thinks I'm guilty. Everyone I know has already written me off. Good, Emily said. Nathan stared at her. Good? Yeah, because that means when we prove you're innocent, it'll hit even harder. Emily stood up, started gathering supplies. Dark clothes from her closet, a backpack, a flashlight that had seen better days. People love a comeback story. The guy who lost everything and clawed his way back from the bottom. That's going to be you. You sound pretty confident for someone about to break into a federal crime scene. Emily shrugged. I'm either confident or I'm in denial. Either way, we're doing this, so I might as well commit. As the sun set over Chicago, they prepared for the most reckless thing either of them had ever attempted. Emily changed into black jeans and a dark hoodie. Nathan wore the same torn suit he'd been wearing for days because it was all he had. We look like the world's worst heist crew, Emily observed, studying their reflection in the small bathroom mirror. Yeah, well, Ocean's 11 we're not. Nathan checked the map one more time, memorizing the route. Ready? Emily took a deep breath, let it out slowly. No, but I don't think I'll ever be ready for this, so let's just go. They left the apartment as full darkness fell over the city, two people walking toward a building that represented everything Nathan had lost and everything he needed to get back. The streets were busy with evening traffic, people heading home from work or out for dinner, living normal lives that didn't involve breaking into skyscrapers. Nathan envied them. Sterling Tower rose against the night sky like a monument to his failure. He'd built that. 47 floors of glass and steel and ambition. His name used to be on the building, literally, in chrome letters 8 feet tall. The letters were gone now, removed the same day he'd been arrested. Service entrance is 2 blocks east, Nathan said quietly, pulling his collar up against the wind. They circled the building, staying in shadows, moving like they belonged there but had somewhere else to be. Just 2 more people in a city of millions. Nothing remarkable, nothing worth noticing. The service entrance was exactly where Nathan remembered. A plain metal door next to a loading dock, camera mounted above it, no guard visible from the outside. 15-second delay on the feed, Emily whispered. We wait for someone to leave, slip in during the gap. They waited. 5 minutes. 10. Nathan's nerves were stretched so tight he thought they might snap. Then the door opened and a janitor emerged, pulling a cart full of trash bags. He propped the door with his cart while he sorted recycling, his back to the entrance. Now, Emily hissed. They moved fast, slipping through the door before it could close, before the janitor could turn around, before the camera could catch more than a blur of motion. Inside, the hallway was dimly lit and smelled like industrial cleaner. Nathan's heart hammered against his ribs. They were in. Actually in. "Freight elevator," he breathed, pointing. They hurried down this corridor, footsteps echoing too loud in the empty space. The elevator doors opened at Emily's touch. No security yet, because they were still in the public access area. Nathan hit the button for basement level 3 and felt the elevator lurch downward into the heart of his former empire. The elevator descended with a mechanical groan that sounded deafening in the silence. Nathan watched the floor numbers tick downward. Ground, B1, B2, and felt his stomach drop with each level. Emily stood perfectly still beside him, her breathing controlled, her face unreadable in the dim emergency lighting. The doors opened onto B3 with a pneumatic hiss that made them both flinch. The basement corridor stretched ahead like something from a nightmare Nathan used to have. Endless concrete, fluorescent lights humming overhead, industrial pipes running along the ceiling like veins. He'd been down here maybe 3 times in all the years he'd owned the building. There'd never been a reason. This was maintenance territory, the unglamorous guts of the tower that kept everything above running smoothly. "Which way?" Emily whispered. Nathan pointed left. "Server room's at the end of that corridor. Security station should be about halfway." They moved quietly, their footsteps muffled by the rubber coating on the concrete floor. Nathan's torn dress shoes squeaked slightly with each step, and he winced at the sound. Everything felt too loud down here, too exposed. The security station appeared around a corner, a glass-walled office with monitors showing camera feeds from throughout the basement levels. Through the window, Nathan could see one guard inside, his feet propped up on the desk, watching something on his phone instead of the screens. Emily grabbed Nathan's arm, pulling him back before they could be seen. "Can we go around?" Nathan shook his head. "Only way to the server room is past that office. And even if we sneak by, we still need to figure out the door override. So we need to get him out of there." "Any ideas that don't involve assault?" Emily chewed her lip, thinking. Then she pulled out her cheap prepaid phone and handed it to Nathan. "Call the front desk. Report a disturbance on B1. Something that needs immediate security response. When he leaves to check it out, I'll slip into the office and find the override." "That's..." Nathan wanted to say it was too risky. Too many things that could go wrong. But they didn't have better options. "Okay, but be fast." He dialed the building's main number from memory, surprised his brain still held on to that information. A bored voice answered on the third ring. "Sterling Tower Security." Nathan lowered his voice, tried to sound panicked. "There's someone in the B1 parking garage. I heard glass breaking, saw someone running between the cars. I think they're trying to steal vehicles." "Sir, who is this?" "I'm a tenant on the 15th floor. I was getting something from my car. Just send someone, okay?" Nathan hung up before they could ask more questions. Through the glass wall, they watched the guard's radio crackle to life. He sat up, listened to the dispatcher, then grabbed his keys and headed for the door. "Wait for it," Emily breathed. The guard exited the office, turned right toward the elevator, his footsteps receding down the corridor. The second he was out of sight, Emily moved. She crossed to the office in 4 quick strides, tried the door handle. Locked. She pulled something from her pocket. A bobby pin, Nathan realized with surprise, and worked it into the lock with practiced fingers. "Where did you learn that?" Nathan hissed from his position around the corner. "YouTube," Emily said without looking up. "You can learn anything if you're desperate enough." The lock clicked. Emily slipped inside, leaving the door slightly ajar behind her. Nathan watched the elevator indicator lights, waiting for the guard to come back, his heart beating so hard he could feel it in his throat. Emily was at the computer, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Even from this distance, Nathan could see her face set in concentration, that same intensity she'd had when planning the break-in. She clicked through screens, typed commands, her eyes scanning information faster than Nathan could track. The elevator dinged. "Emily," Nathan warned, trying to keep his voice low. "Almost there," she muttered, still typing. The elevator doors opened. The guard stepped out, talking into his radio. "Yeah, I'm not seeing anything down here. Probably a false alarm or..." Emily ducked under the desk just as the guard's line of sight would have caught her through the glass wall. Nathan pressed himself flat against the corridor wall, holding his breath, praying the shadows were deep enough. The guard walked past, still talking on his radio, oblivious. He reached the office door, which Emily had left open, and paused, Nathan's blood turned to ice. The guard stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds, looking at the open door like he was trying to remember if he'd locked it. Then he shrugged, stepped inside, and closed it behind him. Emily was still under the desk, trapped in a locked room with an armed security guard who would definitely recognize Nathan if he saw him and would definitely call the police if he found a woman hiding under his desk. Nathan's mind raced. He could create a distraction, draw the guard out again, but that would expose him, and once the guard saw his face, the entire building would lock down. They'd never reach the server room. Through the glass, Nathan watched Emily's hand slowly emerge from under the desk, holding her phone. She tapped the screen, and Nathan's phone buzzed in his pocket. He looked at the message. Fire alarm. Pull it. Now. Nathan looked around frantically, spotted the red fire alarm box mounted on the wall 20 feet away. If he pulled it, the entire building would evacuate. Every guard, every employee, everyone would flood the exits. But it would also bring the fire department, potentially the police, and they'd be caught in a building they'd broken into. Emily's face appeared for just a second from under the desk, her eyes meeting Nathan's through the glass. She nodded once, decisive. Nathan ran to the alarm and yanked the lever down. The sound was immediate and overwhelming, a piercing shriek that echoed through the concrete corridors like the building itself was screaming. Red lights began strobing along the ceiling. The guard jumped up from his desk, grabbed his radio, and rushed out of the office. The second the door closed behind him, Emily rolled out from under the desk, sprinted to the door, and burst into the hallway. "Go!" she shouted over the alarm. They ran down the corridor toward the server room, the fire alarm covering the sound of their footsteps. Behind them, Nathan could hear voices, people evacuating from upper floors, the chaos spreading through the building. The server room door appeared ahead, solid steel with a biometric scanner mounted beside it. Nathan's fingerprints wouldn't work. He didn't have the access code. They'd come all this way, and the last barrier was going to stop them cold. Emily skidded to a stop in front of the scanner, pulled out her phone, and started reading numbers off the screen. The override code is 773924. I got it from the security terminal before you hid under the desk from an armed guard. Yeah, I was there for that part. Nathan punched in the code, his fingers shaking. The scanner beeped. Red light. Access denied. What? Emily checked her phone again. That's the code, I'm sure of it. Nathan tried again, slower this time, making sure each number registered. 773924. Access denied. We're missing something, Nathan said, fighting panic. The fire alarm was still wailing, but it wouldn't be long before someone realized there was no actual fire and started investigating. Override codes usually require biometric confirmation even in emergencies. It's a failsafe. So we need someone's fingerprint who still has access. Emily looked at the scanner, then at Nathan, her eyes widening. Damien, he took over the company. His prints would work. Yeah, and he's probably in his penthouse right now drinking scotch that costs more than your rent. We can't exactly... No, but his office is upstairs. Emily was already moving, heading back toward the elevator. People touch things. Keyboards, coffee mugs, papers. If we can get something with a clear print, we can lift it. With what? Nathan followed her. We don't have fingerprint lifting equipment. Tape and powder, Emily said over her shoulder. Every office building has both. We just need to get creative. The elevator ride back up felt longer than the descent. The fire alarm still screaming, the emergency lights casting everything in hellish red. They emerged on the 47th floor, executive level, where Nathan had spent most of his working life, and found it empty. Everyone had evacuated. The glass doors to what used to be Nathan's office suite stood open. Through them, Nathan could see his old desk, his chair, his view of Chicago. Except it wasn't his anymore. Damien's nameplate sat where Nathan's had been. Damien's diplomas hung on the walls. Even the family photo of Sophie that Nathan had kept on his desk was gone, replaced by nothing. His office is the corner one, Nathan said, his voice tight. That used to be mine. Emily didn't comment on the emotion in his voice, just moved past him into the suite. Damien's office was immaculate, expensive furniture, art that probably cost more than Emily made in a year, a wet bar stocked with liquor that Nathan recognized as the same brands he used to drink. Look for something he touches regularly, Emily said, pulling open drawers. Phone, pen, anything smooth enough to hold a print. Nathan spotted a coffee mug on the desk, still half full. He picked it up carefully by the handle, avoiding the sides where Damien's fingers would have been. The mug was from their old partnership days, a joke gift Nathan had given Damien after their first big contract. World's best business partner, written in gold letters that felt like mockery now. "This'll work," Nathan said. Emily found a roll of clear packing tape in a desk drawer and what looked like eyeshadow in another drawer. Damien apparently kept a full grooming kit in his office. She crushed the eyeshadow into powder, dusted it lightly across the mug's surface, and several fingerprints appeared like ghosts. "You've done this before," Nathan observed. "I told you, I minored in forensic accounting. We had a whole unit on evidence collection." Emily pressed a strip of tape against the clearest print, lifted it carefully, then stuck it to a piece of paper. "Not perfect, but it might fool the scanner if we're lucky." They took the elevator back down, the fire alarm finally cutting off as they descended. The sudden silence was almost worse than the noise, making every sound they made echo through the empty shaft. B3 again. The corridor was still empty, but Nathan could hear voices somewhere in the distance. The security team would be doing a sweep, making sure the building was clear before allowing people back inside. Emily pressed the tape with Damien's fingerprint against the scanner, holding her breath. Nathan typed in the override code again. 773924. The scanner beeped. Green light. The lock disengaged with a heavy clunk that sounded like freedom. Nathan pulled the door open and they slipped inside the server room just as footsteps echoed from somewhere down the corridor. The door sealed behind them with a pressurized hiss, and suddenly they were standing in the nerve center of Sterling Logistics. The room was cold, kept at precisely controlled temperature for the servers. Row after row of black towers hummed with processing power, their lights blinking in patterns that looked almost alive. This was where everything lived, every transaction, every record, every piece of data that made the company function. "Where do we start?" Emily asked, her voice small in the vast space. Nathan moved between the server rows, reading labels, his brain trying to remember the company's digital infrastructure. Financial records would be on the primary server cluster. He turned a corner and stopped. The server cage at the far end of the room had its door hanging open. Inside, one tower had been pulled partially from its rack, cables dangling like cut arteries. "Someone's already been here," Nathan said. "Recently." Emily knelt beside the server, examining the disconnected cables. "These aren't dusty. This was done in the last few days, maybe hours." Nathan felt cold dread settle in his stomach. "Damien, he's cleaning up evidence. If he's already purged the financial records, then we find the backups." Emily stood up, scanning the room. "Every system has redundancy. Where would the backup drives be?" Nathan thought back to the installation years ago. The IT consultant explaining disaster recovery protocols. "There's a secondary system, off-site backups that sync every night, but there might be local drives too, for emergency restore." They searched the server room like treasure hunters in a digital cave, pulling drives, checking labels, getting more desperate with each minute that passed. Most of what they found was recent data, operational information, nothing that would prove Nathan's innocence. Emily was shoulder deep in a rack of drives when she froze. "Nathan, look at this." She pulled out a small external drive, smaller than the others, tucked behind the main backup array where someone would only find it if they knew to look. The label was handwritten in Damien's distinctive scrawl, DC, Personal Archive, 2019 to 2024. DC, Nathan said. Damien Cross. "And look at the date range." Emily's hands were shaking as she held the drive. "This goes back 5 years, before the pension fund theft started. If he was paranoid enough to keep personal backups of everything, then this might have the real financial records." Nathan took the drive, felt its weight in his palm. Something so small, containing information that could destroy Damien and save Nathan's life. "We need to verify it before we—" Emily started to say. The server room door opened. Nathan and Emily spun around. Damien Cross stood in the doorway, perfectly dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost $5,000, his expression calm and almost amused. Behind him, a man the size of a refrigerator blocked the exit. Marcus Reed, Damien's new head of security, former Special Forces, the kind of person you hired when you needed problems to disappear. "Nathan," Damien said, like they were meeting for lunch instead of a confrontation in a server room. I had a feeling you'd show up here eventually. You were always predictable when you were desperate. Nathan's hand tightened around the drive. How did you know we were here? Please, I own this building now. Every camera, every sensor, every lock reports to me. Damien stepped into the room, Marcus following like a shadow. The fire alarm was clever, very dramatic, but you triggered 3 different silent alerts on your way down here. I've been watching you stumble around my server room for the last 10 minutes. Your server room, Nathan said. Your building. Everything's yours now, isn't it? Must feel good, finally getting everything you thought you deserved. You have no idea how good it feels. Damien's smile was sharp. Do you know how many years I spent watching you take credit for my work? You were the face of Sterling Logistics, the name everyone knew, the guy who got profiled in Forbes while I did the actual work of running the company. You want to know the truth, Nathan? You were always just a figurehead. I was the one making it all happen. So you framed me for theft and destroyed my life out of jealousy? Nathan could feel Emily tense beside him, could see her calculating distances and exits in the way she shifted her weight. Not jealousy. Justice. Damien's voice went cold. You had everything handed to you, family money to start the business, connections through your wife's family, natural charisma that opened doors I could never touch. And you wasted it all playing devoted father, leaving early for Sophie's ballet recitals while I worked 80-hour weeks to keep everything running. You're insane, Emily said quietly. You stole billions of dollars from people's retirement funds because your partner spent time with his daughter? Damien's eyes shifted to Emily, seeing her for the first time. And you must be the waitress, the one who helped Nathan escape my associates at the diner. Emily Carter, age 30, $73,000 in medical debt, no family, no prospects. Tell me, did Nathan promise to pay off your debts if you helped him? Or are you just naturally stupid enough to throw your life away for a man you met 3 days ago? I'm smart enough to know you're a thief and a liar, Emily shot back, and we have proof. She nodded toward the drive in Nathan's hand, and Nathan saw Damien's expression flicker for just a second. Surprise, maybe. Or fear. That drive doesn't prove anything, Damien said. Then why do you look worried? Nathan held up the drive. This is your personal archive, Damien. 5 years of financial records that you kept as insurance. Every real transaction. Every account you manipulated. Every penny you stole. It's all here, isn't it? Even if it was, you'll never get it out of this building. Damien gestured to Marcus. Kill the waitress first. Let Nathan watch. Then we'll discuss what happens to the drive. Marcus reached for the gun holstered at his side. Nathan's mind went blank with panic and rage. He'd spent his entire adult life making calculated decisions, weighing risks and benefits, finding the smart play. But watching Marcus's hand move toward that gun, knowing Emily was about to die because she'd tried to help him, something primal took over. He threw the drive. Not at Damien or Marcus, but at the nearest server rack, as hard as he could. The drive hit the tower's edge and exploded in a shower of plastic and circuits. Pieces scattered across the concrete floor, the data inside destroyed beyond recovery. Everyone froze. No! Damien's composure shattered. He lunged toward the destroyed drive, dropping to his knees to gather the pieces like they could be put back together. You idiot! That was my insurance. 5 years of records. Yeah, Nathan said, his voice surprisingly steady. I know, and now it's gone. Whatever evidence was on that drive is destroyed. You don't have your insurance anymore, Damien, and neither do I. Marcus's gun was out now, pointed at Nathan's chest. His face showed no emotion, just professional readiness to follow orders. Shoot him, Damien said, his voice shaking with rage. Shoot them both. Make it look like they broke in and attacked you. Self-defense. Marcus's finger tightened on the trigger. Emily moved. She grabbed the nearest thing available, a keyboard from a workstation, and hurled it at the overhead sprinkler system. The keyboard hit one of the sensors dead on, and suddenly the server room's fire suppression system activated. But instead of water, white vapor exploded from ceiling vents. Halon gas, Nathan's brain supplied. The server room used chemical suppression to avoid damaging electronics with water, and halon gas displaced oxygen. They had maybe 90 seconds before the room became unbreathable. Run! Emily grabbed Nathan's arm and pulled him toward the door. Marcus fired, but the gas was already obscuring vision. The bullet sparked off a server rack 3 feet from Nathan's head. They ran blind through the white fog, Nathan's lungs already burning from the chemical vapor. Behind them, Damien was shouting, Marcus was firing blind, and alarms were screaming again as the building's systems registered the halon release. Nathan hit the door first, his shoulder slamming the release bar, and they tumbled out into the corridor. Emily yanked the door shut behind them, and Nathan jammed the external lock with the piece of broken server drive he'd grabbed on the way out. Through the door's small window, they could see Damien and Marcus pounding on the glass, their faces obscured by white vapor. The room was sealed. Halon suppression systems locked down completely once activated, a safety feature to prevent the gas from spreading. "They'll run out of air in there," Emily gasped, coughing. "They've got maybe 3 minutes before the system auto-vents," Nathan said, also coughing. "We need to move, now." They ran for the elevator, Nathan's destroyed shoes finally falling apart completely. He kicked them off and ran in socks, his feet slapping against the cold concrete. The elevator rose with agonizing slowness. Nathan could hear shouting from below, the sound of Damien and Marcus breaking through the server room door. They'd be coming. "The evidence," Emily said between breaths. "We destroyed the evidence." "I had to. He was going to kill you." Nathan leaned against the elevator wall, his lungs still burning from the halon. I wasn't going to let that happen." "So now what? We have nothing to prove you're innocent." Nathan pulled out his cheap prepaid phone, looked at it for a long moment, then started typing. "Maybe we don't need the drive." "What are you doing?" "Something stupid." Nathan hit send and Emily's phone buzzed. "I just texted you everything I remember about the server room, the destroyed drive, Damien's confession about framing me. Send it to every journalist you can find. Upload it to social media. Make it public before Damien can bury it." "But it's just your word against his," Emily protested. "Without proof." "We make him prove it." Nathan was thinking fast now, the same way he used to solve impossible logistics problems. Damien kept that drive as insurance, which means he's paranoid about being caught. If we make enough noise, if we get enough people asking questions, he'll panic. Paranoid people make mistakes. The elevator reached the ground floor and they stepped out into chaos. The fire alarm had brought fire trucks, police cars, federal agents who'd been investigating the building. Dozens of people milling around trying to figure out what was happening. Nathan and Emily slipped into the crowd, just 2 more confused faces among hundreds. Nobody looked at them twice. They were invisible in the way poor people always were around the wealthy. Background noise that didn't register as important. They made it 3 blocks before Nathan's legs gave out. He sat down hard on a bus stop bench, his body finally acknowledging that it had been through hell for days and couldn't continue without rest. Emily collapsed beside him, her face pale, her hands still shaking. "We broke into a building, triggered a fire alarm, destroyed evidence, and almost got shot. And we accomplished exactly nothing." "We accomplished something," Nathan said, but his voice lacked conviction. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind exhaustion and despair. They sat in silence, watching emergency lights reflect off Sterling Tower's glass facade. Nathan's building, his empire, the monument to everything he'd built and lost. Emily's phone buzzed. She looked at it, her eyes widening. "Nathan, you need to see this." She showed him the screen. Social media was exploding with speculation about Sterling Tower. Someone had live-streamed the fire trucks arriving. Multiple people were posting about seeing Nathan Cole near the building. Grainy photos, distant shots, but definitely him. And then, buried in the comments on one post, Nathan saw something that made his heart stop. A video link, posted 20 minutes ago by an account called TruthSeeker777. Emily clicked it. The video showed the server room from a high angle, security camera footage, but not the official building feed. This was from someone's phone, recording the security monitors. The timestamp showed it was from 15 minutes ago, right when they'd been in the server room. The video had sound. Nathan and Emily watched in stunned silence as Damien's voice came through clearly. "You had everything handed to you. I worked 80-hour weeks to keep everything running. That was my insurance. 5 years of records." The video cut off, but the damage was done. Damien had confessed, on camera, and someone had been watching the security feeds and recording them. "Who posted this?" Nathan asked. Emily scrolled through the account information. "No name? Anonymous. But she paused, her expression changing. The video's already been shared 4,000 times, and the media is picking it up. Look. She showed him news alerts popping up on her phone. Breaking. New evidence in Cole pension scandal. Surveillance video suggests frame job. Who is Damian Cross? Nathan's hand shook as he took the phone, watching the view count climb in real time. 5,000 shares, 7,000, 10,000. Someone helped us, Emily said quietly. Someone in that building was watching and they recorded everything. Nathan thought about the server room, about the cameras he'd seen, about who might have access to those feeds. And then he remembered the security guard in the basement office, the one who'd almost caught Emily. The guard whose office had a direct feed to the server room cameras. The guard who'd been watching his phone instead of the monitors when they first saw him. Except maybe he hadn't been watching his phone. Maybe he'd been recording the monitors on his phone. We need to get somewhere safe, Nathan said, standing up. This video is going to make Damian desperate, and desperate people do dangerous things. They walked through Chicago's streets as Nathan's old life imploded on social media. Every block, Emily checked her phone and reported new developments. Mainstream news picking up the story. Lawyers offering to represent Nathan pro bono. Public opinion shifting as people watched Damian's confession loop on every platform. By the time they reached Emily's apartment, Nathan Cole was no longer the most hated man in America. Damian Cross was. Emily's apartment felt smaller with the weight of what they'd just done pressing down on them. Nathan sat on the floor with his back against the wall, his feet bleeding from running barefoot through Chicago's streets, while Emily paced the narrow space between her Murphy bed and the kitchenette. 23 million views, she said, staring at her phone. In 2 hours. The video has 23 million views. Nathan closed his eyes. He should have felt relieved, vindicated, but all he felt was hollow. Views don't mean anything. Damian's lawyers will claim the video is doctored. They'll say I broke into the building and staged the whole thing. Except you couldn't have staged it. Emily stopped pacing. The security footage proves you were in the server room, but the angle shows it was recorded from the security office cameras. You didn't have access to those. Someone else was watching and recording. Someone we don't know. Someone who could disappear or recant or... Nathan's voice cracked. He was so tired. Tired of running, tired of fighting, tired of hoping things would work out when his entire life kept proving they wouldn't. Emily sat down beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. Hey, we're not done yet. Aren't we? Nathan looked at his hands. They were shaking. We broke into my old building, destroyed the only hard evidence that could have proven my innocence, and now we're waiting for a viral video to save us. That's not a plan, Emily. That's desperation. Yeah, well, desperate is all we've got. She bumped her shoulder against his. So we use it. Nathan's phone buzzed. He'd almost forgotten he still had it. The screen showed an unknown number and every instinct told him not to answer. Unknown numbers had been bringing bad news for weeks, but Emily nodded at the phone. Could be important, he answered. Hello? Mr. Cole. The voice was male, professional, unfamiliar. My name is James Rivera. I'm a federal prosecutor with the Northern District of Illinois. I need to speak with you about Damian Cross. Nathan's heart stuttered. I can't talk to prosecutors without a lawyer. I'm not calling about charges against you, Rivera said quickly. I'm calling because that video of Mr. Cross has raised serious questions about the evidence used to indict you. I'd like to offer you protection in exchange for your cooperation in building a case against Cross. Protection. Nathan laughed, but it came out bitter. Where was this protection a week ago when his thugs were hunting me? I understand your frustration, Mr. Cole, but things have changed in the last 2 hours. Public pressure is mounting. My office is being flooded with calls demanding we investigate Cross. If you come in now, voluntarily, I can help you. Nathan looked at Emily. She was watching him, her expression unreadable. What kind of cooperation are we talking about? Everything you know about Cross's business dealings, financial records you can remember, people he worked with, accounts he had access to. We need to build a case, and you're the only person who is close enough to see how he operated. And if I help you, what happens to my charges? Rivera hesitated. I can't make promises. But if we can prove Cross framed you, your case becomes much weaker for the prosecution, especially with that video circulating. Nathan's brain was working through the angles, the risks, the possibilities. Going to the federal prosecutor meant putting himself in their hands, trusting a system that had already failed him once. But staying on the run meant living in Emily's apartment indefinitely, hiding from Damien's people, waiting for the next threat to find them. "I need 24 hours, Nathan said, to think about it. Mr. Cole, every hour you delay gives Cross more time to flee the country or destroy evidence. If you're serious about clearing your name, 24 hours, Nathan repeated. Then I'll call you back. He hung up before Rivera could argue. Emily raised her eyebrows. Federal prosecutor offers you protection and you ask for time to think? Because the second I walk into their office, I lose control. Nathan set the phone down. Right now, Damien's scrambling. The video blindsided him. He's probably calling lawyers, trying to figure out damage control. If I go to the feds immediately, he'll know exactly where I am and what I'm doing. He'll adjust his strategy. So what's your strategy? Nathan didn't have one. Or he did, but it was half-formed and reckless and would probably get them both killed. We keep him off balance. Make him think we have more evidence than we do. Force him into making a mistake big enough that the feds can't ignore it. How? I don't know yet. Nathan ran his hands through his hair. It was greasy, unwashed for days. He probably smelled terrible. His life had fallen apart so completely that basic hygiene had become a luxury. But I know Damien. When he's threatened, he doesn't retreat, he attacks. We just need to point him in the right direction. Emily's phone rang. She looked at the screen and frowned. Unknown number. Don't answer it, Nathan said immediately. But Emily was already swiping to accept. Hello? Her face went pale. She listened for maybe 10 seconds, then ended the call without saying a word. Who was it? Nathan asked. Damien. Emily's voice was flat. He says if we don't turn over all copies of any evidence we have by tomorrow morning, he'll make sure I'm charged as an accomplice to your breaking and entering. He'll bury me in legal fees I can't afford, and make sure I never work in Chicago again. Nathan felt rage bloom in his chest, hot and sudden. He's bluffing. He doesn't have that kind of power anymore, not with that video out there. Maybe, but he sounded pretty confident. Emily set her phone down carefully, like it might explode. He also said he knows where I live, said he could have people here in minutes if he wanted. The threat hung in the air between them. Nathan stood up too fast, his vision swimming from exhaustion and low blood sugar. We need to leave, right now. And go where? Emily didn't move. I don't have money for a hotel. You definitely don't. We can't just wander the streets all night. Then we go to the police, get actual protection instead of the police who arrested you? The ones who froze your accounts and took your daughter away? Emily shook her head. They're not going to protect us, Nathan. They're going to lock you up again and leave me to deal with Damien on my own. She was right. Nathan knew she was right. But standing in this tiny apartment, knowing Damien knew where they were, felt like waiting in a trap for it to spring. There has to be somewhere, Nathan said. Someone who... He stopped. Thought about the people from his old life. The connections he'd had before everything fell apart. Most were gone, but there was one person who might still help. Someone who'd worked for Sterling Logistics before Damien took over. Marcus Webb, his old mentor. The same Marcus Webb, whose assistant had claimed he was traveling abroad indefinitely. Which, now that Nathan thought about it with less panic and more clarity, was exactly what someone would say if they were hiding and didn't want to be found. I might know a place, Nathan said slowly. My old business mentor. He disappeared right after I was arrested. Never returned calls, but Marcus was careful, paranoid even. If he thought Damien was dangerous, he would have gone underground. You think he's still in Chicago? Only one way to find out. Nathan picked up his phone, scrolled through his contacts to a number he hadn't called in years. Marcus's personal line, not the office number, the one he only gave to people he actually trusted. It rang 4 times. Nathan was about to give up when someone answered. Yeah? The voice was Marcus's, but rougher, wary. Marcus, it's Nathan Cole. I know what you need. Marcus cut him off. Saw the video. Figured you'd call eventually. Can we meet? Not over the phone. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Nathan could hear traffic in the background, city sounds. You remember the place where we closed our first deal, the restaurant? Nathan's brain scrolled through memories. Their first major contract had been with a shipping company out of Milwaukee. They'd celebrated at a little Italian place in Lincoln Park. Giovanni's, but that place closed 3 years ago. The building's still there. Alley entrance around back, 1 hour. Marcus hung up. Emily was already pulling on her jacket. I'm coming with you. It could be a trap. Damien could have gotten to Marcus, could have forced him to pull. If it's a trap, then you'll need someone watching your back. Emily grabbed the kitchen knife she'd set out on their first night and slipped it into her jacket pocket. Besides, I'm in this deep already. Might as well see how it ends. They left the apartment through the back exit, down a fire escape that rattled with every step, and into an alley that smelled like garbage and rainwater. The city was fully dark now, streetlights creating pools of yellow that made the shadows between them deeper. Nathan had walked Chicago's streets as a billionaire in $1,000 shoes, protected by wealth and status, and the assumption that nothing bad could touch him. Now he walked them as a fugitive, every passing car a potential threat, every pedestrian someone who might recognize him from the news. Lincoln Park was upscale, the kind of neighborhood where Nathan used to own a condo before he bought the penthouse. Tree-lined streets, boutique shops, restaurants with wait times measured in weeks. Emily looked uncomfortable here, her cheap jacket and worn jeans marking her as someone who didn't belong. Giovanni's had indeed closed, the windows dark and covered with paper. But the building stood intact, wedged between a yoga studio and a wine bar that probably charged $20 for a glass of mediocre Chardonnay. They found the alley entrance, a narrow passage between buildings that led to loading docks and dumpsters. Nathan's nerves were screaming at him to run, to not walk into an enclosed space where escape would be impossible. But Marcus was there, standing in the shadows near an old delivery door. He looked older than Nathan remembered. Thinner, his expensive suits replaced with jeans and a winter coat that had seen better days. Nathan! Marcus stepped forward, and Nathan saw his eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. You look like hell. Yeah, well, being framed for financial fraud and hunted through Chicago will do that. Nathan gestured to Emily. This is Emily Carter. She's the reason I'm still alive. Marcus studied Emily with the same analytical gaze he used to use on business contracts. The waitress from the diner. I saw the video. You're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Probably both, Emily said without flinching. Marcus almost smiled. Then his expression hardened. We don't have much time. Damien's got people looking for you. Professional people, not the idiots he sent to the diner. Former military, experienced trackers. They will find you. So help us, Nathan said. You know Damien. You worked with him for years. There has to be something we can use against him. I got out because I suspected what he was doing. Marcus pulled out a cigarette, lit it with shaking hands. 6 months before you were arrested, I started noticing irregularities. Small things at first. Transfers that didn't match invoices. Accounts that showed activity outside normal business hours. I tried to bring it to your attention, but you were distracted. Your daughter had just started school. You were dealing with custody arrangements. I remember. Nathan felt guilt twist in his gut. You sent me an email about financial audits. I told you to handle it because I trusted you and Damien to manage that side of things. Yeah, and when I tried to handle it, Damien shut me down, said I was being paranoid, showed me documents that explained away every irregularity. Marcus took a long drag on his cigarette. But the documents were too clean, too perfect. So I started keeping my own records, copying files, building a case in case I needed leverage. Nathan's heart jumped. You have evidence? Had. Past tense. Marcus's expression was grim. The day after you were arrested, my house was broken into. Nothing valuable was taken except my laptop and backup drives. Everything I'd collected was gone. Damien, Emily said. Obviously. But here's the thing, I'm paranoid too. I kept copies, hidden in a place even Damien wouldn't think to look. Marcus flicked ash onto the ground. Cloud storage account registered under my dead brother's name. Tax records, transfer logs, email chains showing Damien manipulating accounts. It's not everything, but it's enough to raise serious questions. Then why didn't you go to the FBI? Nathan demanded. Why let me take the fall when you had evidence? Marcus looked at him, and Nathan saw something in his old mentor's eyes that made his blood run cold. Fear. Raw, honest fear. Because Damien told me if I said anything, he'd kill my granddaughter. Marcus's voice cracked. She's 4 years old, Nathan. Lives in Minneapolis with my daughter. Damien sent me a photo of her at preschool with a message saying accidents happen to children all the time. So I ran, changed my name, moved every few weeks, stayed off the grid. I'm a coward, and I let you suffer because I was too afraid to lose the only family I have left. The confession hung in the alley like smoke. Nathan wanted to be angry, wanted to rage at Marcus for abandoning him. But looking at the broken man in front of him, Nathan understood. He would have done the same thing to protect Sophie. The evidence you have, Emily said carefully. Can you access it now? Marcus nodded. I can send you the login credentials. But the second you access that account, Damien's IT people might trace it. He's got hackers monitoring everything related to this case. So we use a public computer, Nathan said. Library, internet cafe, somewhere with no connection to either of us. And then what? Marcus asked. You hand it to the FBI and hope they don't screw up the investigation? Damien's got lawyers who can tie this up in courts for years. By the time a case goes to trial, he'll be in a country with no extradition treaty. Nathan thought about Rivera's offer. 24 hours to decide. If he had Marcus's evidence, going to the feds became a real option instead of a desperate gamble. There's a federal prosecutor who wants my cooperation, Nathan said. If I give him your evidence along with my testimony, it strengthens the case, makes it harder for Damien to fight. They'll want me to testify too, Marcus said. Soon as my name's attached to those files. Would you? Emily asked. If they could protect your granddaughter? Marcus was quiet for a long time, his cigarette burning down to the filter. Finally, he dropped it and crushed it under his shoe. Yeah, I would. I'm tired of running, and I'm tired of knowing I let a good man suffer because I was too chicken shit to do the right thing. He pulled out a burner phone, typed something, then showed Nathan the screen. Login credentials for a cloud storage account. Memorize it. Don't write it down. The files are organized by years. Start with 2020. That's when the pension fund transfers began. Nathan committed the information to memory, repeating it silently until the numbers and letters were locked in. Thank you, Marcus. I know what this cost you. Just make it count. Marcus pocketed the phone. And Nathan, be careful. Damien's not going to let this go quietly. That video made him look weak, and he'll do anything to regain control, including things that make framing you look tame. They parted ways in the alley, Marcus disappearing into the Chicago night like he'd never been there. Nathan and Emily walked in silence for 3 blocks before Emily spoke. We need to access those files tonight, she said, before Damien figures out Marcus talked to us. Public libraries closed. Internet cafes are too exposed. Cameras everywhere, too many witnesses. Nathan's brain cycled through options. We need somewhere with public Wi-Fi, but private enough that nobody's watching what we're doing. Emily stopped walking. Rosie's Diner. Your old workplace, where Damien's thugs already came looking for me? Exactly. They already hit it once. They won't expect us to go back there. Emily pulled out her phone, made a call. Hey, Ray, it's Emily. Yeah, I know. I missed my shifts. Listen, I need a favor. Can you leave the back door unlocked tonight? I need to grab some stuff from my locker. She listened, nodded. Thanks. I owe you. She hung up. Ray's the night cook. High most of the time, doesn't ask questions. Back door will be unlocked, and there's a laptop in the office that has Wi-Fi. This is insane, Nathan said, but he was already walking toward the diner. The streets near Rosie's looked different at midnight than they had a few nights ago. More dangerous somehow, or maybe Nathan was just more aware of the dangers now. They approached from the alley, found the back door propped open with a brick just like Emily said it would be. Inside, the kitchen was empty except for Ray at the grill, cooking what looked like someone's very late dinner. He glanced at Emily, nodded once, and went back to his cooking without a word. The office was a closet-sized room with a desk drowning in paperwork and a laptop that was probably older than Sophie. Emily booted it up while Nathan kept watch through the office door's small window. Okay, give me the login, Emily said, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Nathan recited the credentials from memory. Emily typed them in, hit enter, and they both held their breath. The screen loaded. A cloud storage interface appeared showing folders organized by year, just like Marcus said. Emily clicked on 2020. The folder contained hundreds of files. Spreadsheets, PDFs, scanned documents. Nathan leaned over Emily's shoulder, scanning the file names. Transfer logs for Sterling Logistics, pension fund account activity, email chain, offshore accounts. This is it, Emily breathed. This is everything we need. She started opening files. Nathan saw numbers he recognized, account codes he'd signed off on without really examining because he trusted Damien to handle the details. Transfers made in his name that he'd never authorized. Emails discussing moving money through shell companies, all sent from Damien's private email, but using Nathan's digital signature. He forged your authorization on everything, Emily said, clicking through documents faster now. Look at this. Every major transfer has your signature, but the metadata shows the documents were created from Damien's IP address. You were being set up for years. Nathan felt sick. Years of his life, his work, his trust, all manipulated so perfectly that even looking at it now, he could see how easy it would be to believe he was guilty. Damien had been meticulous. Download everything, Nathan said. We need copies before... The laptop screen went black. Emily hit keys frantically. What just happened? Remote access. Nathan's blood turned to ice. Someone just took control of the computer. Text appeared on the black screen, white letters typing themselves out in real time. Hello, Nathan. I've been waiting for you to find Marcus's little insurance policy. Thanks for making it easy. Emily yanked the laptop's power cord from the wall. The screen died completely. Too late, Nathan said. He saw everything. He knows we have the login credentials. Can he delete the files remotely? If he has the credentials, yeah, and he just watched us type them in. Nathan pulled Emily out of the office. We need to leave, now. They ran through the kitchen. Ray looked up from his grill, saw their faces, and wisely went back to cooking. They burst out the back door into the alley just as Nathan heard car doors slamming from the street. Damien's people, already here. This way! Emily grabbed his hand and pulled him deeper into the alley, away from the street where the cars had stopped. Behind them, Nathan heard footsteps. Multiple sets moving fast. Professional pursuit, not the clumsy chase from before. They ran through a maze of alleys and side streets, Emily navigating with the confidence of someone who'd lived in this neighborhood for years. Left at the dumpster, right past the loading dock, straight through a gap between buildings barely wide enough for their shoulders. Nathan's lungs burned. His feet were bleeding again from running on concrete without shoes. But the footsteps behind them were getting closer. Emily ducked into a recessed doorway, pulling Nathan with her. They pressed into the shadows, breathing hard, as three men ran past. Nathan caught glimpses of tactical gear, communication devices, weapons. These weren't thugs. These were hunters. We can't outrun them, Emily whispered. No. Nathan's mind was racing. They needed leverage. Something to make Damien call off his people. But we can make this too public for him to keep coming after us. How? Nathan pulled out his phone, opened the camera app. We live stream everything, show the world that Damien Cross is hunting us through Chicago with armed men. Make it impossible for him to claim this is legitimate business. He'll just say you're a fugitive and he's helping law enforcement. Then we give them something he can't explain away. Nathan looked at Emily. We go back to Sterling Tower, break in again, but this time we do it on camera. Show everyone exactly what we're looking for and why. Make Damien either admit there's evidence he's hiding or look like he's got something to protect. Emily stared at him. That's suicide. The building's going to be locked down after what happened earlier. Exactly. Which means if we can get in, it proves we have inside knowledge. It proves I actually ran that company and knew its systems. Nathan could see the plan forming, reckless and desperate, but maybe possible. And if we live stream it, Damien can't make us disappear without the whole world watching. This is the worst plan you've ever had. Probably. You in? Emily took a deep breath, let it out slowly. Then she started setting up a live stream on her phone. If we die, I'm going to be so angry with you. They waited until the hunters moved on, then emerged from the doorway and headed towards Sterling Tower for the second time that night. Emily's phone was live streaming to every social media platform she had, the viewer count already climbing as people noticed Nathan Cole was broadcasting live. If you're watching this, Nathan said to the camera, you're about to see the truth about Damien Cross and what he's been hiding. We're going to show you evidence he's been trying to destroy. And if we don't make it out, at least you'll know why. The viewer count hit 1,000, then 5,000. People were sharing the stream, commenting, watching in real time as Nathan and Emily walked through Chicago's streets toward the building that had been Nathan's kingdom. Sterling Tower loomed ahead, most of its windows dark now, just security lights and a few late workers visible. The main entrance was definitely locked, guarded, impossible. But Nathan had owned this building for years. He knew every entrance, every weakness, every way in that the architects had never intended. Service tunnel, he told Emily, pointing to a subway grate in the sidewalk half a block from the tower. Connects to the building's basement through the old steam pipe system. They sealed it off years ago, but the access point is still there. They pried open the grate and climbed down into darkness that smelled like mold and rat droppings. Emily kept the phone camera pointed forward, the live stream showing their descent into Chicago's underground. The viewer count was at 20,000 now. Nathan led them through passages he'd only seen during building inspections, following half-remembered blueprints. The tunnel was tight, claustrophobic, water dripping from pipes overhead. But it led exactly where Nathan knew it would, to a maintenance access panel that opened into Sterling Tower's sub-basement. They emerged in a mechanical room, furnaces and water heaters surrounding them. Emily's phone showed 40,000 viewers. "We're in," Nathan told the camera, "and we're going to find the proof that Damian Cross has been destroying evidence. Stay with us." They made their way through the basement, and Nathan knew with certainty that this was either going to save his life or end it. There was no middle ground anymore. The only question was which ending Damian would choose when he realized the whole world was watching. The viewer count hit 60,000 as Nathan and Emily climbed the maintenance stairs from the sub-basement. Nathan could hear his own breathing echoing in the concrete stairwell, could see Emily's hand shaking slightly as she held the phone camera steady. Somewhere above them, Damian knew they were here. He had to know. The question was what he'd do about it with 60,000 people watching in real time. "We're heading to the executive level," Nathan said to the camera, his voice surprisingly calm. "Damian Cross's office. If there's any evidence he hasn't destroyed yet, it'll be there. He's paranoid enough to keep backups of everything, even his crimes." Emily kept the phone pointed at Nathan as they climbed. The comments section was scrolling so fast it was unreadable, but Nathan caught glimpses. "This is insane. Call the police. He's going to get killed. Team Nathan all the way." They reached the ground floor access door. Nathan expected it to be locked, expected security to be waiting on the other side. But when he pushed, it swung open easily. The lobby was empty. Not just empty of people, empty of the usual night security, the cleaning crews that should have been working, the building staff that kept a place like this running 24/7. Just dark marble floors and the echo of their footsteps. "This feels wrong," Emily whispered, though the phone picked it up clearly. "Because it is." Nathan scanned the lobby. "He's letting us in. He wants us to get to the executive level." "Why?" Nathan didn't answer because he didn't know, and speculation would only make things worse. They crossed to the elevator bank, and Nathan hit the call button. The elevator arrived immediately, doors opening with a quiet chime that sounded obscenely normal given the circumstances. They stepped inside. Nathan pressed 47. The doors closed. Emily's phone showed 85,000 viewers now. The elevator rose smoothly, and Nathan watched the floor numbers tick upward while trying to ignore the feeling that they were walking into a trap they couldn't see yet. 20 floors. 30. 40. The elevator slowed, stopped. The doors opened onto the executive level. Damian Cross stood in the center of the reception area, perfectly calm, wearing a different suit than earlier, but just as expensive. Behind him, Marcus Reed loomed like a promise of violence. And behind Marcus, 3 more men in tactical gear, the same ones who'd chased them through the alleys. But none of them moved to attack. They just stood there, watching, as Nathan and Emily stepped out of the elevator. 112,000 viewers, Damian said conversationally, like he was commenting on the weather. "Impressive. You always did know how to work a crowd, Nathan. All charisma, no substance." Emily kept the phone camera trained on Damian. Nathan could see himself in the reflection of the elevator doors, haggard, barefoot, wearing a suit that looked like it had been through a war. Next to Damian's polished appearance, Nathan looked like exactly what he was, desperate and broken. "Why aren't you stopping us?" Nathan asked. "Because you're not a threat." Damian gestured around the empty floor. You broke into my building, on camera, broadcasting to the world. You've just given me everything I need to have you arrested for trespassing, breaking and entering, corporate espionage. The feds were already looking for you. Now they'll have video evidence of you committing new crimes. We came for evidence that you framed me, Nathan said, speaking to the camera as much as to Damien. Evidence that Damien Cross stole billions from pension funds and destroyed my life to cover his tracks. Evidence you destroyed in the server room earlier tonight. Damien's smile didn't waver. My personal archive that contained 5 years of financial records. You smashed it in front of witnesses. Very dramatic, by the way. But it sort of undermines your credibility when you claim you're looking for evidence you already destroyed. Nathan felt the trap close around him. Damien was right. To everyone watching, Nathan looked like a guilty man destroying evidence and then claiming he was searching for it. The narrative was perfect. The archive was your insurance, Emily said, stepping forward slightly. Records of the real transactions that proved you stole the money, not Nathan. You kept it as leverage in case someone started asking questions. That's an interesting theory. Damien's attention shifted to Emily, and Nathan saw something cold flicker in his former partner's eyes. Unfortunately, theories don't hold up in court. Evidence does, and all the evidence points to Nathan. Except the video of you confessing, Emily said. That's evidence. A video that could have been edited, taken out of context. My lawyers are already working on that. Damien took a step forward. Here's what's actually going to happen. Nathan goes back to jail for breaking his bail conditions and committing new felonies tonight. You, Emily Carter, get charged as an accomplice. And I continue running Sterling Logistics while the legal system slowly grinds through appeals and motions that I can afford, and you can't. The viewer count was at 140,000 now. Nathan could feel the weight of all those people watching, waiting to see what happened next, waiting to see if the broken billionaire could somehow pull off a miracle. You're wrong about one thing, Nathan said quietly. I didn't destroy all the evidence. Damien's expression flickered, just for a second, but Nathan caught it. Marcus Webb kept copies, Nathan continued. Your old colleague, the one who disappeared before you could threaten his family. He's been documenting everything you did for years. Tax records, transfer logs, emails showing you manipulating accounts in my name, and about an hour ago we accessed all of it. That got a reaction. Damien's jaw tightened, his hands curling into fists. If you had evidence, you would have gone to the FBI already. We tried to download it from Rosie's diner, Emily said, understanding Nathan's play. But someone took remote control of the laptop and locked us out. Someone with serious hacking capability and knowledge that we were trying to access Marcus's files. She looked directly at Damien. Which means you've known about Marcus's backup all along. You've been monitoring it, waiting to see who tried to access it, and when we did, you stopped us. Damien's silence was confirmation enough. The live stream comments exploded with speculation. But here's the thing about cloud storage, Nathan said, feeling momentum shift for the first time all night. It keeps access logs, records of every IP address that views files, every time someone tries to delete something, every remote takeover attempt. And you just created a digital trail connecting you directly to evidence tampering. That doesn't prove anything, Damien said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. Maybe not by itself. Nathan pulled out his phone, the cheap prepaid that was nearly dead. But I called federal prosecutor James Rivera 20 minutes ago, told him everything about Marcus's files and the remote takeover, gave him the cloud storage credentials and the IP address that locked us out. He's getting a warrant right now to trace that IP and access the files before you can delete them. Nathan was bluffing. He hadn't called Rivera. Didn't know if any of what he'd just said was actually possible. But Damien didn't know that. And more importantly, 150,000 viewers didn't know that. Damien's composure cracked. You're lying. Am I? Nathan held up his phone, showing a call log that could have been to anyone. You taught me that the best negotiations are the ones where the other side isn't sure what you know. So here's my offer, Damien. You confess everything right here, right now, on camera. Tell the truth about framing me, about stealing from the pension funds, about threatening Marcus's family. Give the FBI everything they need to recover the stolen money and make things right. And if I refuse, then we all go down together. Nathan's voice was steel. The feds will trace that IP to you. They'll access Marcus's files and build their case. It'll take months, maybe years, but eventually the truth will come out. You'll spend the rest of your life in court, burning through millions in legal fees, watching your empire crumble. Or you can end this now and maybe get a deal that lets you see freedom again before you're 70. Damien looked at Nathan, really looked at him. And Nathan saw the exact moment his former friend realized he'd lost. Not because Nathan had outsmarted him. Nathan had been stumbling through this whole nightmare half blind and desperate. But because Damien had been so focused on the sophisticated plan, the perfect frame job, that he'd forgotten the simple truth. Guilt makes you paranoid, and paranoid people make mistakes. You really want to know why I did it? Damien's voice was quiet, dangerous. You want the confession? I want the truth, Nathan said. Damien laughed, but it sounded wrong. The truth is, you never deserved any of this. Sterling Logistics was my idea, my business plan, my connections that got us the first contracts, but you were the face of it because you had the family name, the charm, the ability to make people trust you even when you didn't know what you were talking about. He started pacing, his carefully controlled demeanor unraveling with each word. I worked 90-hour weeks while you left early for your daughter's school plays. I negotiated deals while you took vacations. I built the financial infrastructure while you smiled for magazine covers. And everyone called it Cole's company, your empire, your success. So you stole billions to prove a point? Emily asked, the camera still recording every word. I took what I earned, Damien snapped. What I built. The pension funds were easy targets. Old systems, minimal oversight, trustees who didn't understand modern finance. I moved the money through shell companies I'd been setting up for years. Offshore accounts, legitimate-looking investments that actually led nowhere. And every transaction was authorized with Nathan's digital signature because I had access to everything. You framed me, Nathan said. I liberated myself from your shadow. Damien's eyes were wild now, the mask completely gone. I was going to disappear with the money, start over somewhere else, build something that was actually mine. But then you started asking questions, getting too close. So I accelerated the timeline, fed information to the FBI, made sure they found the evidence trail leading to you. It was supposed to be clean. You'd go to prison, I'd take over the company legitimately, and everyone would forget you ever existed. Except I didn't go quietly, Nathan said. No, you didn't. You ran. You found this... Damien gestured dismissively at Emily, Waitress, who somehow managed to be smarter than she had any right to be. You survived when you should have been broken. You kept fighting when you should have given up. Damien pulled out a gun. The live stream exploded. 170,000 viewers watching as Damien Cross pointed a weapon at Nathan Cole's chest. So here's how this actually ends, Damien said, his voice steady again, cold. You tried to kill me during your break-in. I shot you in self-defense. Tragic story. The disgraced billionaire who couldn't accept his guilt attacked his former partner and died as a result of his own violence. Emily will corroborate my story, or she'll be charged as an accomplice to attempted murder. Either way, I win. Marcus Reed stepped forward, and Nathan realized the security chief had his weapon drawn too, pointed at Emily. The other tactical team members fanned out, cutting off any escape routes. Except you're forgetting something, Emily said, her voice shaking but determined. 200,000 people are watching this live. You can't kill us without every single one of them seeing you commit murder. Can't I? Damien's finger moved to the trigger. Live streams end. Phones break. Accidents happen. And by tomorrow, my lawyers will have spun this into exactly the story I need. Nathan looked at the gun, at Damien's face, at the end of everything he'd been fighting for. He thought about Sophie, about his daughter growing up believing her father was a criminal who died while attacking his innocent partner. He thought about Emily, who'd risked everything to help a stranger because she believed in doing the right thing. And he thought about the silver coin in his pocket, the lucky piece Emily had given him, the promise that he'd return it when he rebuilt his life. You're right, Nathan said quietly. You win. Damien blinked, surprised. What? You win. You're smarter than me, more ruthless, better at this game. Nathan took a step forward, toward the gun, instead of away from it. You built the company's infrastructure, Jichikwe, while I was playing CEO. You planned this for years while I trusted you completely. You thought of everything. Nathan, what are you doing? Emily hissed. Nathan ignored her. But you made one mistake, Damien. Just one, but it's going to cost you everything. I didn't make mistakes, Damien said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. You did. You got greedy. Nathan took another step. The pension funds were enough. Billions of dollars, offshore accounts, a clean escape. But you couldn't leave it there. You had to take the company too. Had to have your name on the building. Had to prove you were better than me. Nathan was close enough now to reach out and touch the gun. If you'd just disappeared with the money, I would have spent my life in prison, and you would have been drinking Mai Tais on a beach somewhere. But you needed the recognition, the vindication. You needed everyone to know that Damien Cross was the real genius behind Sterling Logistics. So? Damien's hand was shaking slightly now. So you stayed in Chicago, stayed visible, stayed connected to evidence that links you to the crimes. Nathan's voice dropped lower, intimate, like they were the only two people in the room instead of being broadcast to 220,000 viewers. And you're about to make your biggest mistake right now. You're going to kill me on camera because you can't stand the idea of me winning, even when losing would be smarter. Damien's face went white. Nathan could see the realization hitting him. He was so focused on silencing Nathan that he'd forgotten about the bigger picture, the same way he'd forgotten that staying in Chicago made him vulnerable. Put the gun down, Damien, Nathan said softly. It's over. You confessed everything on camera. 250,000 people heard you admit to theft, to framing me, to planning this whole thing. Even if you kill me now, it doesn't change that. You've already lost. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Damien lowered the gun, and Nathan saw tears on his former friend's face. I just wanted what was mine, Damien whispered. Is that so wrong? What was yours was partnership, Nathan said. Friendship, a company we built together. But you wanted more than your share, so now you get nothing. The elevator dinged behind them. Federal agents poured onto the executive level, weapons drawn, voices shouting commands. James Rivera was with them, his face grim but satisfied. Damien Cross, you're under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, theft, and about 15 other charges we're still counting. Rivera signaled his team. Everyone lower your weapons, now. Marcus Reed and the tactical team complied immediately. They were professionals, and professionals knew when the job was over. Damien just stood there, the gun hanging loose in his hand, looking at Nathan with an expression that was part hatred and part something that might have been regret. How? Damien asked as the agents cuffed him. How did you... I called Rivera from the maintenance tunnel before we came up, Nathan said. Told him everything, gave him the live stream link. He got an emergency warrant and brought his team. They've been in the lobby for the last 10 minutes, waiting for you to confess. You lied about calling him 20 minutes ago. Yeah, I lied. Guess I learned something from you after all. Nathan felt no satisfaction in the words, just exhaustion. Rivera approached Nathan and Emily. Mr. Cole, Miss Carter, you're both going to need to come with us, give statements. Though I have to say the live stream is going to make the prosecution's job a lot easier. Am I under arrest? Nathan asked. For breaking and entering tonight? Technically, yes. But given that you just handed us a confession to a $3 billion theft on live camera, I think we can work something out. Rivera actually smiled. Your charges will likely be dropped within 48 hours. Cross's lawyers are going to argue the confession was coerced, but with 250,000 witnesses, that's going to be a tough sell. They took Damien away in handcuffs, Marcus Reed and the tactical team in separate vehicles. Emily finally lowered her phone, ending the live stream after nearly 2 hours. The final viewer count was just over 300,000. We did it, she said, her voice hollow with shock. We actually did it. Nathan wanted to feel victorious, wanted to feel relief or joy or anything except the numbness spreading through his chest. He'd won. Cleared his name. Exposed Damien. But looking around the executive level, his old domain, the place where he'd spent years building something he thought mattered, all he felt was empty. Come on, Rivera said gently. Let's get you both somewhere warm. You look like you're about to collapse. The federal building was warm and sterile, and nothing like the jail Nathan had been in before. They separated him and Emily for statements, and Nathan spent 4 hours telling his story to a court reporter who typed everything without expression. When they finally let him stop, dawn was breaking over Chicago. Rivera brought him coffee that actually tasted like coffee instead of burnt despair. Your sister's outside with your daughter. We called her once we had Cross in custody. Figured you'd want to see them." Nathan's throat closed up. "Sophie's here?" "Waiting room." Drove through the night once she heard what happened. Rivera set the coffee down. "You're free to go, Mr. Cole. We'll need more statements later, depositions for the trial, but for now you're not under arrest. Your bail's been dismissed, your assets will be unfrozen within a week, and the charges against you are being formally dropped." Nathan stood up too fast, his vision swimming. "And Emily? Ms. Carter's statement is consistent with yours and the live stream. She's not being charged with anything. Actually, between you and me, she's kind of a hero. The forensic accounting stuff she spotted early on, that's what's going to help us trace the money and return it to the pension funds." Nathan found Emily in another interview room, looking as exhausted as he felt. She'd been given clean clothes, FBI sweats that were too big for her, and someone had bandaged the cut on her cheek from the diner fight. "Hey," Nathan said from the doorway. "Hey." Emily managed a weak smile. "We're not criminals anymore." "That's nice." "Yeah." Nathan sat down across from her. "Emily, I don't know how to thank you for—" "Don't." She held up a hand. "If you thank me, I'll start crying, and I've been holding it together for like 3 days straight. I'd like to make it a few more hours before I completely fall apart." Nathan laughed, and it felt good. When was the last time he'd actually laughed? "Okay, no thanking, but when you're ready to fall apart, I'll be there. If you want, I might take you up on that." Emily looked at her hands. "What happens now? For you, I mean. You get your life back, your company, all of it." "I don't want the company," Nathan said, surprising himself with how true it was. "Sterling Logistics was built on Damien's crimes and my ignorance. I spent years caring more about business than about the people the business was supposed to serve. More about profit margins than about my daughter. I don't want to go back to being that person. So what do you want?" Nathan thought about the past week, about being homeless and hungry and hunted, about seeing Chicago's streets from the ground level instead of from a penthouse, about learning that the quiet waitress who served him pie had more courage and intelligence than most of the executives he'd employed. "I want to build something different," he said slowly. "Something that actually helps people instead of just making money. Maybe a consulting firm that helps companies avoid the kind of fraud Damien pulled, or a foundation that pays off medical debt for people like you who got buried trying to do the right thing." Emily's eyes widened. "Nathan, you don't have to—" "I want to. Not out of obligation, because you showed me what I should have been seeing all along. That money's only worth something if you use it to make people's lives better." Nathan pulled the silver coin from his pocket. "You gave me this. Said to return it when I rebuilt my life. I think I'm starting to understand what kind of life I actually want to build." He set the coin on the table between them. "Partners in whatever comes next?" Emily looked at the coin, then at Nathan, then back at the coin. Finally, she picked it up, felt its weight, and pocketed it again. "Keep it a while longer," she said. "You're not done rebuilding yet. But yeah, partners." Rivera appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Cole? Your daughter's getting impatient." Nathan stood up, his legs shaky but holding. He walked through the federal building's corridors with Emily beside him, and for the first time in his adult life, he wasn't thinking about the next deal, or the next meeting, or the next move that would make him richer or more powerful. He was just thinking about seeing his daughter. Sophie was in the waiting room with Julia, and when she saw Nathan, she ran. 8 years old, all knees and elbows and messy braids, and she hit him like a small crying missile. "Daddy!" She wrapped her arms around his waist, and Nathan dropped to his knees so he could hold her properly. "Hey, baby girl," he managed, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I was gone." "They said you were a bad man," Sophie sobbed into his shoulder. "But I knew you weren't. I knew you'd come back. I'm back, and I'm not going anywhere." Nathan held his daughter and felt something inside him that had been frozen since Rachel's death finally start to thaw. "I promise, Sophie. I'm not going anywhere ever again." Julia stood nearby, tears streaming down her face. "Nathan, I'm sorry I didn't believe—" "It's okay." Nathan reached out with one arm and Julia joined the hug, the three of them holding each other in a federal building waiting room while dawn light streamed through the windows. Emily watched from a respectful distance, and when Nathan looked up at her, she smiled and nodded. Then she quietly slipped away, giving them privacy for their reunion. The next 6 months were a blur of depositions and trials and media coverage. Damien's confession was played and replayed on every news channel. The stolen pension funds were traced and recovered, not all of it, but enough that most people got their retirement savings back. Damien went to prison for 30 years with no possibility of parole. Marcus Webb testified, protected witness status, keeping his granddaughter safe. The security guard who'd recorded the server room footage turned out to be an off-duty cop working side security, and he got a commendation for his quick thinking. Sterling Logistics was dissolved, its assets sold off to pay restitution. Nathan's name was cleared completely. His reputation rebuilt article by article as the full story emerged. He was offered book deals, movie rights, speaking engagements that would have made him rich all over again. He turned them all down. Instead, he and Emily started a small consulting firm that specialized in forensic accounting and fraud prevention. They worked out of a modest office in a part of Chicago that wasn't trendy or prestigious, helping small businesses and nonprofits avoid the kind of financial disasters that ruined lives. Emily paid off her medical debt with her first year's salary. Nathan set up a foundation that covered medical expenses for families dealing with terminal illness, named after Rachel and Emily's mother. He sold the penthouse and bought a normal house in a normal neighborhood where Sophie could ride her bike to school. On Tuesday nights, rain or shine, Nathan still went to Rosie's diner. The new owner, Ray, the stoned cook who'd helped them that last night, kept a booth permanently reserved. Nathan would order cherry pie and coffee, and Emily would join him after her shift at the office. They'd talk about cases, about life, about how strange it was that losing everything had led to finding something better. Nathan never ordered the pie without thinking about that first night, when a shy waitress had seen a broken man and decided to help anyway. Sophie joined them sometimes, doing homework in the booth, while Nathan and Emily worked through spreadsheets and financial reports. She liked Emily, called her Aunt Em, even though they weren't related. And sometimes Nathan would catch them laughing together and feel grateful for the second chance he'd been given. Not a second chance at being a billionaire, a second chance at being human. One Tuesday evening, 6 months after Damien's conviction, Emily slid the silver coin across the table to Nathan. "I think you're done rebuilding," she said. Nathan picked up the coin, felt its familiar weight. "What if I don't want to pass it on yet?" "Then you keep it. It's not about the coin, Nathan. It's about remembering that everyone deserves help when they're at their lowest, and then paying it forward when you're back on your feet." Nathan pocketed the coin. "So what happens now?" Emily smiled, the shy waitress smile that had first made him think she was timid before he learned she was actually fearless. "Now, we keep building, we help people, we live good lives. Isn't that enough?" Nathan looked around the diner, the cracked vinyl booths, the flickering neon sign, the smell of coffee and possibility. He thought about Sophie at home with her aunt, safe and loved. He thought about the families his foundation had helped, the businesses he and Emily had saved from fraud. He thought about how losing billions of dollars and everything he'd built had taught him the one thing money could never buy, that the value of a life wasn't measured in what you accumulated, but in what you gave away. Not in the empire you built, but in the people you helped build back up when they were broken. "Yeah," Nathan said, and meant it with everything he had. "That's enough." Outside, Chicago hummed with evening traffic and a million lives being lived. Inside Rosie's diner, a former billionaire and a waitress who'd saved his life sat across from each other over cheap coffee and cherry pie, building something that actually mattered. And for the first time in Nathan Cole's life, he wasn't looking toward the next big deal or the next success or the next thing that would prove his worth. He was just present, just grateful, just human. And that was the real fortune he'd been searching for all along.